Thank you so much, Lynn. And thank you to Philip in Chicago, one of our members. It is the fabulous thing about being able to be a church that, that whole social media thing helps. Amen. We can have people connected no matter where we are. So next week is Palm Sunday. Week after that, as I said, is Easter. Season of Lent, thank goodness, is coming to an end. For those who gave up something fun, you'll get to pick it up again shortly. But for those who decided to pick up something new that helped change the world, keep at it. Do not set that back down again. Amen? As with the theme for Lent has been awakening to the divine within, has been our theme, and as I shared at the beginning, it really has been awakening, awake, wake up, woke. The title of today's sermon is Be Like Jesus, Be Woke. I share with this a quote with you by the Reverend Dr. Caleb Lines. He says, Jesus was woke. He was awakened to the needs of others and called out systems of injustice and oppression. Be like Jesus. Be woke. And as I had shared at the beginning, it is a good thing, and I ask that you remember that the term woke actually comes from the African American community in the 1930s. It was developed as a message to others in the community to say, stay alert, stay awake, stay woke to the situations that are transpiring around you, to the injustice. Be aware and always stay connected to one another and see one another in your heart and you in theirs. And so this series started in the desert when we heard about the temptations. We were then reminded about the caring for the least of these. We were welcomed home. And last week we heard about the lost sheep. Oftentimes we hear that story through the lens of just the shepherd, and here we decided let's take a look at that story through the lens of the sheep, who either stayed still while the others moved on, decided to leave the flock because he or she had had enough, or it decided the grass was greener on the other side, or they were kicked out. But we talked about how that sheep and all of us are worthy to be found. Well, the passage that you heard just a few moments ago is the second in 3 passages that come right in a row. Jesus was asked by the Pharisees, he was critiqued by the Pharisees. How dare you socialize with those people, the tax collectors and the prostitutes and all of them? How dare you? And his answer were these 3 stories, these 3 parables, which, of course, as we have been taught, teach us about the ever-ending patience of God, if you will. And I do believe that is true. I think that the divine has more patience for us than we even have for our own selves in our journey. However, it's even more than that. I read actually a piece that was written by a pastor a couple years ago. I want to share with you what she said, if I find it in my missile here. Pastor Dawn Hutchings, she wrote this, these passages, it's the anonymous gospel storyteller really saying that Jesus taught his followers to risk everything they have in order to find the one thing that they had lost. Remember how many times these parables must have been told before they were written down. And remember the precarious nature of the lives of the people who first heard these parables. Why did they repeat these stories over and over and over again? Remember, those first gatherings of the people who followed Jesus' teachings met in secret because they feared for their lives. The occupying Roman forces not only publicly executed their teacher as a warning to any of the Jesus followers that they too could be crucified. The Roman Empire crucified as many dissenters as they could, and historians tell us that those roads which all lead to Rome were dotted with thousands of crucifixion sites. Thousands of rotting corpses were left nailed to crosses in order to terrify the masses into submission. The magnitude of loss was positively unbearable. If we take off our rose-colored glasses, she continues, and pick up a pair of lenses permeated with the desire to resist persecution, violence, and the forces of empires, these parables have the potential to inspire the kind of passion necessary to recover the one thing which is lost, and that is justice. Justice without which there can be no peace, and we can only begin to imagine the magnitude of what a conquered, oppressed, suffering people has lost. And think about that. That was the first time I had read these parables with that lens, to realize that the people who told these stories over and over again were actually the same people who witnessed Jesus be crucified, who witnessed their friends, their cohorts, if you will, also be crucified if they dared to speak up to the empire. Does that sound familiar? Does that sound familiar? Which is the reason I believe that these parables take on a new meaning for us today, especially today in the world that we live in. Especially in the world that we live in. You know, the whole concept of wokeness, if you will, when I think about it, I think it's really a lot easier to just stay asleep. Isn't it? Yes. To stay asleep. Have anybody of you had those really fabulous dreams that you really get irritated that the dog barked and woke you up from? Right? Or somebody decided to text you at God knows what hour and bing, and you are now awake and you just had to skip out of paradise where you were dreaming about, right? Everybody get that? Yeah. And then when you wake up, there's kind of that groggy in between. You know those dreams that you're like, I know this is real? Or at least you hope they're real, right? And then you get woken up and you're like, oh, wait a minute. You know, where am I? I've had those more than once. And in that sleepiness, in that time, especially on your day off, you know, you wake up, you're god-awful tired, and you wake up and you don't know, okay, am I awake yet or am I not awake yet? And in that in-between land. And then you open your eyes. And you see the dirty dishes that were there from the night before. You see where the dog gave you a present on the floor right by your bedside. Or in my case, our case, the cat decided to, right? And that's how you start your day. Then God forbid you start doom scrolling. And boy, a happy dream just turned into a nightmare. Right? Attached to this is also a song that I remember singing back in the 80s in MCC. It was called, and I can't find it, just FYI. I tracked down the person who used to sing it, and she's like, oh, I think I know who did it, and we're still trying to track it down. But the line of it is, as I wish mine eyes had never been opened, because now they are, and I see. And once our eyes are open to the situation and the realities of the world, we do everything to try to shut them, right? I didn't see that, I didn't see that, I didn't hear it, right? But our eyes had been opened. Our eyes have been opened. And we have choices when our eyes are opened. And what is it that we see? Some of the things, I had written down, I can't believe what I am seeing sometimes. I really can't be seeing another queer kid bullied, beaten, and killed. I can't really be seeing thousands upon thousands of people sleeping on the streets of Los Angeles and countless thousands more in other cities and towns in the U.S. I can't really believe that I am seeing reproductive rights being taken away from women that I and others fought for, right? Decades ago. My daughter has fewer rights for her reproductive choices than I did at her age. I can't believe that I'm seeing blatant racism come forth from politicians. I can't believe that I saw the over 1,000 people who were killed in Israel 5 months ago, many of them peace-loving folks at festivals, others being kidnapped, assaulted, and not all of them released. And I certainly can't be seeing over 30,000 Palestinians dead. 20,000 children orphaned and killed, or killed their families. I can't be seeing this. This is our reality. This is our reality of the world that we live in, and I say this not for shock value, but as a reminder. Our faith is the only thing that I know for me that I have to hang on to that has any semblance of sanity in it. And sometimes I can't find much sanity in it, amen. But somewhere in there, not only in the teachings, but in the connections that I have heart to heart in this spiritual community and around the world, maybe, just maybe, we can find a way to envision that dream that we were in before we were so rudely awakened. Right? But the atrocities that we are seeing right now must be named and they must be called out. They cannot be turned away from as much as we want to. As much as we want to. But if we do, we turn our back on the nightmare that this has happened time after time after time again. Today it happens to be Israel and the Palestinians. And let me be clear here. These are choices by the government of Israel and not all Israelis, nor is it the choice and the decision and the point of view of all Jewish people. I'm making that really, really clear. Amen. You've got to hear that and do not conflate my criticism of the decisions of the Israeli government being criticism of Jewish people, because it is not. And for anybody who wonders, I've criticized my own country when we've made decisions to go into other countries and do similar things, okay? And I've done it because of my faith, amen. I've done it because of my faith, because my faith tells me, wake up and see your brethren, see your brothers and sisters, your siblings, your family, and that we are connected heart to heart. It is what the word compassion is all about. It is about being a people who are living with passion. And when our hearts are broken open by the horrible visuals that we see, the stories that we hear, and I'm not just talking about in Gaza, but I'm also talking about in other countries. How about the Congo? Right? How about the genocides that are happening in other parts of this world? Genocide is genocide is genocide, and we've committed it. Think about the indigenous peoples of this country and this land. Amen?
Yes.
Amen.
So in all of this time in the last 5 months, Reverend Marianne can attest to, I have not slept much. I literally have been kept up at night because my heart breaks. And it's not just from Paul's passing. My heart is shattered, and I go to God and I say, God, what the heck is going on here? But more importantly, my cries are, what can I do? I'm only one. I am only one. But together we make many. Do I throw out my faith based on compassion and peace? No. But do I realize that what is happening now is the same thing that Jesus dealt with when he went into the desert? Yeah. What am I talking about? Do you remember what happened to Jesus in the desert? He was tempted by Satan, right? By the evil one. And what was he tempted about? Food. Power. And religious power. Status. That is ancient, and it continues to repeat itself, and it is talked about, I believe, by Jesus, and we talked about it at the beginning of Lent because it is so crucial to knowing and understanding what we are seeing today. In Tuesday night study, one of the conversations was, it's the horror du jour. That's my wording. 4 years ago on Ash Wednesday, I remember the Ash Wednesday service that we have, and our hearts were breaking because we were seeing these same images coming out of Ukraine. Yeah. Right? Different country, same action. When people give in to power and status and food, want, more, and when they get into positions of power, this happens. It has happened and will continue to happen until if and when there's a majority of people in the world that goes back to the root of their faith and think and say what Jesus did to Satan himself, that says, Satan, get behind me. Right? When we see and we hear the stories of Nex, right? We hear what happened to Nex by being beaten by bullies in their school, right? And how many other people? Trans Day of Remembrance, we say a litany, right? In all of these things, we can think of the times when we say a litany. The reality is the same. Children die. Adults don't see their old age, and the old age bury their young. And I stand before you saying, I refuse to claim that as the reality that Jesus calls us to. I refuse to claim that our lives, no matter all of the horrors that happen in this world, that is what God has called us to do and be in this world. People of faith, I say to each and every one of us, open our eyes, and more importantly, open our hearts. I came across this and I went, ooh, because if we don't, then we have premeditated ignorance. Which is the quality or condition of deliberate unawareness. Ooh. It is when people do not know because they do not want to know. La, 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 la. For if they did know, they would have to take responsibility for the knowledge. And they would thereby be required to renegotiate their identity and to relinquish their status and privilege and authority that are derived from the false order of knowledge. At the very least, they would be compelled to leave their comfort zone. So, friends, I ask you, Lent is a time to challenge yourselves. The United Church of Christ has and has had ministries in Palestine, in Gaza, and in the West Bank for a really long time. If you go to the newsletter this week, you'll see a statement written by UCC, by the heads of the United Church of Christ and the Disciples of Christ in America as well as in Canada, that because of our faith, we say that all human lives are worthy, and we must not treat any in any other way but worthy. That ceasefire is not a dirty word. That Jew and Muslim is not a dirty word. That Christian is not a dirty word. But what we should have at the center, knitting ourselves back together again, is the love of God. I leave you with this. It can be overwhelming to witness, experience, take in all the injustices of the moment. The good news, though, is that we are all connected. So if your little corner of the work involves pulling at one of the threads, you are helping to unravel the whole damn cloth. You know what? They talk about us being a remnant people.
Yep.
Right? With a little frayed around the edges. Anybody feel frayed around the edges? Right? And it's all right that we're frayed around the edges, because that means that we're pulling it apart. We're pulling it apart. And lastly, what do we do with all those pieces, those strands of thread?
Compost.
You can compost them, but I'm going to encourage us to put it on a loom and create a new fabric. Create a new fabric that creates Joseph's multicolored robe, the rainbow robe, that weaves together all of our peoples. Amen? Amen. Amen.